Welcome, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let's get started with today's story. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder if I missed those early cracks. Were there signs that I ignored? Could I have done something differently? But at the time, I was blissfully unaware, living in the belief that love, trust, and commitment were enough to see us through anything. I had no idea how wrong I was. I first met Sophia on a breezy afternoon in June, during a mutual friend's housewarming party. I was never the type to enjoy parties or mingle with large crowds, but that day was different. Perhaps it was fate, or maybe just sheer coincidence. But as soon as I laid eyes on her, everything else faded into the background. She stood near the window, the sunlight streaming in and casting a warm glow around her. She wasn't just beautiful. She had a presence, a quiet confidence, and a genuine smile that seemed to light up the room. She was laughing at something someone said, and her laughter carried across the room like music. It wasn't forced or polite. It was real. For a few minutes, I debated whether to approach her. What would I even say? What if she wasn't interested? But as the crowd shifted, I found myself standing next to her. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" I asked awkwardly. She turned to me, her eyes warm and inviting. "It is," she replied, a smile playing on her lips. "And it's even better now that I've had this lemonade. You should try it." That was the start. From a simple conversation about lemonade, we discovered how much we had in common. She was working as a schoolteacher at the time, passionate about shaping young minds. I was a civil engineer, deeply engrossed in designing bridges and roadways. Despite the differences in our professions, we found a shared love for the arts, especially literature. Sophia adored classic novels, and we spent hours debating over whether Pride and Prejudice was overrated or whether To Kill a Mockingbird deserved its acclaim. Our courtship was nothing short of magical. Sophia had this way of making even the simplest moments feel special. We would sit by the lake in the evenings, sharing stories about our childhoods, our dreams, and our fears. She was candid and open, a quality that I admired deeply. When I proposed to her, it wasn't in some grand, extravagant way. It was during one of our quiet evenings by the lake. The sun was setting, casting hues of orange and pink across the water. I pulled out a small box and handed it to her. "Sophia," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "you make me want to be a better man every single day. Will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears as she nodded, whispering, "Yes." That was the happiest moment of my life. Marriage, for us, started as a seamless extension of our dating life. We were partners in every sense of the word. Sophia brought warmth and laughter into our home, while I provided stability and support. Together, we felt unstoppable. We quickly settled into our roles as husband and wife, navigating the ups and downs of life with a sense of teamwork. Sophia continued teaching, and I worked long hours at the engineering firm. Even as life grew busier, we made it a point to prioritize each other. Date nights were sacred. We'd try new restaurants, go dancing, or simply stay in and watch our favorite movies. When we had our first child, Daniel, everything changed, though not in a bad way. Parenthood brought challenges, but it also deepened our bond. Sophia was a natural mother, patient and nurturing. She made the chaos of parenting seem almost graceful. I, on the other hand, stumbled through those early years learning as I went. But we were a team, and that made all the difference. 3 years later, we welcomed our daughter, Lily. If Daniel had brought joy into our lives, Lily amplified it tenfold. Sophia and I often joked about how we were outnumbered, but truthfully, we wouldn't have had it any other way. Life wasn't perfect. No one ever is. We had our arguments, our moments of frustration, but they never lasted long. Sophia had this way of diffusing tension with a single sentence or a soft touch. She was my anchor, my safe haven. For years, I believed we had built something unshakable. Our love was strong, our family complete, and our future seemed bright. But as I would later learn, even the strongest foundations can crumble when cracks begin to form, unnoticed and unchecked. If anyone had asked me in those early years what the secret to a happy marriage was, I would have said, without hesitation, trust. I believed it was the foundation upon which everything else rested. Without trust, how could love flourish? How could two people truly share their lives? It was a belief I held close when I thought Sophia and I shared. For years, I felt secure in the knowledge that Sophia and I were a team. We had built a life together, one filled with laughter, shared dreams, and a bond that seemed unbreakable. But trust, I would come to learn, isn't a constant. It can be eroded, not by storms or sudden calamities, but by the small, subtle shifts that go unnoticed until it's too late. The first shift came about 2 years ago, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. Sophia had always been close to her phone. It was a lifeline for her work and her social life. But there was a new intensity to it. She began carrying it everywhere, even to the bathroom, and it was always locked with a passcode I didn't know. I noticed, too, how often she smiled at the screen. It wasn't the kind of smile she gave me when we shared a joke or a quiet moment together. This was different, more private, more secretive. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was just my own insecurities creeping in. But as the weeks went by, the feeling of unease grew stronger. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I asked her, "Who do you keep texting all the time?" She glanced at me, a flicker of something, guilt, annoyance, crossing her face before she quickly masked it. "Why must you know?" she said with a casual shrug. "It's just a friend." The way she said it left me unsettled. I let it go that night, but the seed of doubt had been planted. A few months later, things escalated. Sophia started coming home later than usual, with vague explanations about work or meeting up with friends. Then the gifts began to appear. At first, it was a new perfume, an expensive brand I knew we couldn't afford on our current budget. When I asked her about it, she smiled and said her cousin had sent it as a surprise. "Sophia, are you sure? I mean your cousin?" She cut me off with a laugh. "Of course, I'm sure. You know how generous she is." I nodded, but something didn't sit right. Her cousin was generous, yes, but not wealthy. A bottle of that perfume would have cost more than what she made in a month. Then came the jewelry, delicate gold earrings, a bracelet, and eventually a designer handbag. Each time, the explanation was the same: her cousin. I didn't press her further, not yet. Part of me wanted to avoid the possibility that something might be wrong. The real turning point came one night in September. We were having dinner, and Sophia's phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up immediately, her face lighting up as she read the message. "What's so funny?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just something from a group chat," she said, quickly putting the phone down. But I noticed how she angled the screen away from me, how her fingers hovered protectively over it as if guarding a secret. That night, after she had fallen asleep, I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. Was I being paranoid? Or was there something more to this? The next morning, I confided in my best friend, Alex. He and I had been close since childhood, and he was someone I trusted completely. "Maybe you're overthinking it," Alex said after I laid everything out for him. "But then again, if your gut is telling you something's wrong, maybe you should look into it." I nodded, grateful for his advice, but unsure of how to proceed. I didn't want to accuse Sophia without proof, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That's when Alex made a suggestion. "Why don't you test her loyalty? Just to be sure." The idea didn't sit well with me at first. Testing my wife felt deceitful, almost like a betrayal. But as the days went by and the doubts gnawed at me, I realized I needed answers. For the sake of my sanity, if nothing else, I had to know the truth. Little did I know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would change everything. When I decided to test Sophia's loyalty, I wrestled with the weight of my own decision. It felt wrong, sneaky even, but I justified it to myself by thinking that the truth, however painful, would be better than living in doubt. I confided in Alex again, this time to enlist his help. "Are you sure about this, Michaels?" Alex asked, his brow furrowed. "This could backfire in ways you can't predict." "I don't have a choice," I replied. "I need to know. I can't keep living like this, wondering every day if my wife is lying to me." Alex hesitated for a moment before nodding. "All right, but we'll need someone she doesn't know. Someone she might notice." It was then that the name Nathan came up. Nathan was a mutual acquaintance. Handsome, charismatic, and successful. He wasn't a close friend of mine, but we worked together on a project years ago, and he still kept in touch with Alex. If anyone could charm Sophia, it was him. Alex reached out to Nathan and explained the situation. When we all met in person, Nathan seemed reluctant. "Are you sure this is the right thing to do?" Nathan asked, his tone skeptical. "Marriage is sacred, Michael. This feels manipulative." I looked him in the eye and said, "If she's faithful, this will prove it. If not, well, I need to know the truth before it destroys me." Nathan eventually agreed, albeit with hesitation. The plan was simple. He would approach Sophia online, pretending to be someone she'd randomly met. They'd chat casually at first, and if she seemed interested, he'd escalate the interactions. The first message came on a quiet Monday evening. I sat in the living room while Sophia lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Just a casual hello. Nathan had texted me earlier. "We'll see where it goes." I tried to act normal, focusing on the television while my mind raced. Would she respond? Would she brush him off? A part of me hoped she'd laugh it off and show me the message. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. Over the next few days, Nathan kept me updated. At first, Sophia was polite but distant, replying to his messages with short, courteous answers. But as the week went on, her responses grew longer. She began asking him questions, laughing at his jokes, and sharing details about her life. "She's warming up to me," Nathan told me one evening. "But it's still early. This doesn't mean anything yet." I clung to that hope, but it became harder to ignore the signs. Sophia had started spending even more time on her phone, often smiling at the screen or letting out soft chuckles. When I asked her what was so funny, she'd say, "Oh, just a meme in the group chat." Then came the compliments. Nathan knew exactly how to stroke her ego. He told her she was beautiful, intelligent, and captivating. All the things I realized I hadn't told her in a long time. "She seems to like the attention," Nathan said during one of our check-ins. "She's not mentioning you at all, Michael. It's like you don't exist in our conversations." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always believed Sophia and I were partners in everything, but now it felt like I was an afterthought in her life. The turning point came when Nathan sent her a gift, a small, elegant necklace. He told her it reminded him of her beauty and grace. She accepted it without hesitation, even thanking him with a selfie of her wearing it. When I saw the photo, my stomach churned. That necklace wasn't just an accessory. It was a symbol of betrayal. "She's crossing lines now," Nathan told me. "This isn't just harmless flirting anymore." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle over me like a dark cloud. I knew I had to let the plan run its course, but the pain of watching it unfold was almost unbearable. As their interactions grew more intimate, Nathan proposed the ultimate test, a meeting. He suggested they spend a weekend together at a hotel out of town. To my disbelief and heartbreak, Sophia agreed. She told me she's visiting her cousin. I informed Nathan she's already making excuses to cover her tracks. Hearing that confirmed everything I had feared. The woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with was planning to cheat on me. The days leading up to their meeting were some of the hardest of my life. I couldn't look at Sophia without feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I knew I had to wait. When the day finally arrived, I followed them to the hotel, my heart pounding with every mile. Watching them check in together felt like a dagger to my chest. I waited until they were in the room, knowing this was my moment to confront her. The hotel hallway was eerily quiet as I stood outside the door. Every second stretched into eternity as I braced myself for what was about to happen. I could feel my pulse pounding in my throat, the mix of rage, heartbreak, and betrayal burning through me. This was the moment I had been both dreading and waiting for, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see. I could hear their voices from inside the room. Sophia's laugh, soft and familiar, followed by Nathan's deep chuckle. It sounded innocent, casual, almost too natural. I clenched my fists and knocked the door. The sound echoed through the hallway, shaking me to my core. The door creaked open, and there he stood, Nathan, shirtless, his hair slightly disheveled, his face frozen in an expression that shifted from surprise to something I couldn't quite place. "Nathan," I said, my voice sharper than I intended, each syllable trembling with barely contained fury. Before he could respond, my eyes darted past him and into the room. That's when I saw her. Sophia. She was standing in the middle of the room, her back turned to us, fumbling with the clasp of her bra. She froze when she heard my voice, her head snapping around to meet my gaze. For a second, her eyes widened with shock, but then something else flickered across her face, a mix of shame and defiance. "Sophia?" My voice broke as I said her name, disbelief coating every syllable. "What the hell is going on here?" She grabbed the nearest piece of clothing, a thin hotel robe, and hastily wrapped it around herself, as if that could erase what I'd just witnessed. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice unsteady. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Not what it looks like. Then what is it, Sophia?" Because from where I'm standing, it's exactly what it looks like. "You really thought I wouldn't find out?" I said, my words cutting through the air like a knife. "You thought I'd just sit at home, blind to what was happening right under my nose?" I could see the shame in Sophia's eyes. "Michael, I didn't mean for this to happen. It's not what you think." But it was too late for apologies. I wasn't interested in her excuses. I wasn't even interested in what Nathan had to say. This was the end. "You know what, Sophia?" I said, my voice cold and measured. "You see, I hired Nathan," I began, letting the words sink in, "to test you, to see if you'd stay loyal to me. And here we are." I gestured around the room, my voice dripping with disdain. Guess I didn't have to wait long for the results. Sophia's mouth fell open, a mix of shock and anger flashing across her face. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "You hired him? To do what? Seduce me?" "Exactly," I replied bluntly, my jaw tightening. I had a feeling something wasn't right, and I needed to know the truth. "Turns out, I was right to question you." Sophia stepped forward, her fists clenched at her sides. "You set me up? You hired someone to manipulate me, to trick me into this." Her voice cracked as she pointed at Nathan. "How could you? How is this supposed to prove anything? How could I?" I shot back, my voice rising. "How could you, Sophia? You didn't hesitate, did you? One moment of temptation, and you threw everything away." Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or fury. "This is insane," she whispered, shaking her head. "You don't trust me, and now you're blaming me for what? Falling into some trap you set." "It wasn't a trap, Sophia," I said, my tone hard. "It was a choice, and you made yours." "Get dressed," I commanded, my voice cold. "I don't want to hear anything anymore. We're leaving." Nathan glanced at me briefly before awkwardly backing out of the room. I could feel the weight of his gaze, but I didn't care. I had bigger things to deal with now. Sophia finally moved, slowly and reluctantly, as if the weight of the situation had paralyzed her. She disappeared into the bathroom to get dressed, and as I waited, I thought about everything that had led up to this moment. All the signs I had ignored, the little pieces of doubt I had pushed aside. I had trusted her. I had built a life with her. And now it felt like that life was shattering before my eyes. When she came out, she was dressed in a simple, unremarkable outfit, trying to act as if nothing had changed. But I could see the fear in her eyes. She knew this was the end. I motioned for her to follow me. "We're leaving. Now." I didn't care if it was awkward or uncomfortable. I wasn't going to give her a chance to justify her actions any longer. The drive back home was silent. Not a single word was spoken between us. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, her face pale, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I could feel her eyes on me, but I couldn't bring myself to look at her. The pain was too raw, too fresh. How had everything come to this? We arrived at home, and I didn't waste any time. I walked straight to the study and sat down at the desk, pulling out the divorce papers I had prepared weeks earlier. I had known, deep down, that I would be here eventually. It wasn't something I had wanted, but it had become inevitable. Sophia stood in the doorway, her eyes filled with tears now. "Michael, please don't do this." I swear, nothing happened. We didn't. I raised my hand, silencing her. I've seen enough, Sophia. You've shown me who you really are. I slid the divorce papers across the table toward her. Sign these. It's over. She hesitated, her fingers trembling as she reached for the papers. Please, Michael, don't do this. We have children. We've been through so much together. I love you. I shook my head. You don't love me. You love yourself. You love the attention, the excitement. You love being pursued. But you don't love me. Not the way I deserve. She broke down in front of me, her sobs shaking her body. I never meant for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't care, I replied, my voice sharp. The damage is done. You've already hurt me more than I ever thought possible. After leaving the divorce papers on the table, I walked out of the house, desperate to clear my head. My thoughts were tangled in a storm of emotions. Anger, betrayal, love, and heartbreak all wrestling for dominance. I didn't know what to do or where to go, but I knew I needed to talk to someone. I drove to meet a few close friends at a quiet cafe, people I trusted to give me honest advice. As I sat down and poured out everything, the lies, the confrontation, the divorce papers, I felt the weight of their stares. They were as shocked as I was, but instead of fueling my anger, they encouraged me to take a step back and think. You've been through hell, Michael, my friend James said, leaning forward with a thoughtful expression. But before you make a decision you can't take back, think about the bigger picture. Your kids, your family. Do you really want to tear everything apart? Maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's a wake-up call. Alex nodded. I know it feels impossible right now, but people make mistakes. Sophia messed up, big time, but everyone deserves a second chance. For the sake of your kids, at least reconsider. I wanted to argue, to say that betrayal this deep couldn't be fixed. But their words stayed with me. What about the kids? They were innocent in all of this. How would they cope with a broken home? Report her to her parents, Daniel added. They need to know what's going on. Sometimes when family steps in, it gives everyone a new perspective. Let them hold her accountable and guide her back to the family you've built together. I spent hours with my friends, their words sinking in slowly. They didn't excuse Sophia's actions, but they reminded me that forgiveness, though painful, could be the path to healing, not just for her, but for all of us. That evening, I made the difficult decision to visit Sophia's parents. Her father opened the door, his warm smile fading as he saw the strain on my face. I sat with them and explained everything, not angrily but honestly. They were heartbroken. Her mother wiped tears from her eyes, while her father sat silently, processing my words. Michael, her mother said softly, I can't express how sorry I am for what she's done. But please, don't give up on her yet. Sophia has always been impulsive, but she loves you deeply. Let us talk to her. Let us help fix this. Her father, a man of few words, finally spoke. Marriage is hard, son. It tests us in ways we never expect. But sometimes, it's those tests that make us stronger. You've always been good to her, and she knows that. If you can find it in your heart to forgive her, we'll stand by you and make sure this never happens again. I nodded, my chest tight with emotion. They weren't trying to excuse her actions, but they were pleading for the chance to save what we had built. I returned home to find Sophia sitting in the living room, the divorce papers untouched on the table. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and when she saw me, she stood up hesitantly, unsure of what to say. I spoke to your parents, I said simply, sitting down across from her. They know everything. She nodded, her hands trembling as she clutched a tissue. I was wrong, Michael. I hurt you in ways I never thought I could, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I love you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Therapy, counseling, anything. Please just give me one chance. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. The weight of her words hung in the air between us. Then I let out a deep sigh, feeling the walls of my anger start to crack. I also apologize. The way I handled it wasn't right either. I had our friend approach you to test your loyalty. It wasn't fair. But we'll try therapy. But understand this, Sophia. This is your last chance. If we do this, it's going to be hard. You'll have to prove to me every single day that you're committed to this marriage and our family." Tears streamed down her face as she nodded fervently. "I'll do it. I'll do anything." Months later, as I watched Sophia laugh with our children at the dinner table, I realized how far we had come. We weren't perfect, but we were healing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could make it through this storm together. Because in the end, love isn't about never making mistakes. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard. If this story got you hooked, kindly like and subscribe to my YouTube for more interesting stories like this.